OpenAI has just released the latest version of GPT-4o, which is GPT-4o mini. This is a trend we see with a lot of the big AI players. You see this coming out of Meta with their Llama models, and you see this coming out of Google with their Gemini models. And the idea is not everything that needs to be done by AI has to be done by the most powerful model. So while GPT-4o is incredible and can do a lot, it might be overkill as far as the electricity and as far as the compute and the power that it actually uses to get a job done. If you just need to generate an article headline or ask it for a joke or ask it for some small thing that doesn't use a lot of brain power, you don't really need the most powerful model. To be honest, it's kind of like, if you had a small legal question, you don't want to go to the most expensive attorney in the city that has, a long history of solving a certain, huge cases and, working with some big things. You can go to, a much more affordable option. And this kind of applies for a lot of things. So in any case, this is the idea here where GPT-4o mini is now able to do things faster. Let's break down exactly what it can do. And in the podcast, essentially talk about some of the capabilities and what we're going to be seeing out of OpenAI moving forward for this. So they had a big blog announcement, obviously introducing this. They say this is their most cost-efficient model yet that they have created. We're also seeing reports from Microsoft that they immediately have it available on Azure AI. Now, this is something you'd expect, right? Because OpenAI and Microsoft are partnering. But as soon as it gets released and announced by OpenAI, Microsoft has it on Azure. And I think this really is a testament to just how closely these two companies are tied together. And really, Microsoft is controlling, while they may appear to, they try to not look like they're controlling, but they're controlling a lot of things happening at OpenAI. Another interesting thing kind of on that note is the fact that Microsoft recently left their observer role at OpenAI, which is, they had an observer role after Sam Altman got kicked out, and there was a lot of drama and they weren't sure what was going on at OpenAI. They wanted to keep an eye on things. It's interesting they willingly dropped that observer role. You'd think, well, why not just keep that? And it's interesting because right now there's also simultaneous lawsuits in the EU from regulatory bodies against Microsoft for how they essentially acquired all of the Inflection AI's leadership team and brought them over to run Microsoft AI. So I think they don't want to seem like they're in everyone's business too much, but obviously when they have a release of a new model like this and it's immediately on Azure, they're quite tied together. So here's some interesting things. GPT-4o mini allows customers to deliver applications that are much faster. It's significantly smarter than GPT 3.5 Turbo. So this is interesting, right? Because we all got really used to using GPT 3.5 Turbo. This was the most amazing thing before GPT-4o mini came out. And so now essentially we're being able to use GPT-4o, but it's much smaller. Apparently it scored 82% on measuring massive multitask language understanding. That's MMLU, that's a benchmark, compared to 70%, the GPT 3.5 Turbo. So that's, 12% higher. It is more than 60% cheaper. And this is, I think, what's a lot of people are very excited about. I saw a ton of people on X posting and saying this is something that they love, is that all of a sudden, all of their costs, the cost of goods sold, just dropped by 60%. And so this is just an opportunity for them to immediately make more money. So this is great. What's interesting is it does have a 128,000 context window. So this is about the size of a small novel, which is honestly phenomenal. And what's so cool is, back when all of this started a year and a half ago, if you wanted to have a train a model, for example, let's say you wanted to train a model to be really good at answering questions about rheumatoid arthritis or something, you could go get all the data you wanted. You would have to train an actual model. So that's going to cost you a lot of money, hundreds of thousands or $1 million to train even a small model to answer questions like that. All of a sudden, in my opinion, now that we have these AI models with 128,000 character context windows, this small novel, you could just go and today gather a ton of data, a ton of research around a certain topic, give it to it, and it's essentially built, the model's already trained. Now it just has the extra context, and it can answer questions. It's like we can skip that really expensive phase. Now, is it as good? Is it as fast? Is it as, whatever? There's all these extra things, but like you can do a lot of very powerful things that just weren't possible before, and it cut that cost way down. So I think this 128,000 context window is really, really massive. Apparently, it brings some better qualities to languages from around the world. So obviously, I speak English, so I have the bias that this thing is, I'm just focused on what it comes out with English. But I think a lot of people around the world are going to be very excited and happy that this thing's getting better in other languages as well. So I think if you kind of look through what OpenAI has announced about it specifically, they said it's priced at 15 cents per million input tokens, and about 60 cents per million output tokens. So this is an order of magnitude more affordable than some of their previous models. And it essentially enables a bunch of new tasks with two things that I think are really big: the low cost that it has, but also the low latency. So I've already done podcasts talking about some of the exciting things that 11 Labs has done with like audio AI and to lower that latency. Now we're seeing the latency getting cut from the AI model. So, I mentioned, the reason this is great is because you can do simpler tasks. That's not the only reason this is great. This is great because it significantly lowers the latency as well. So not just simpler tasks, but like GPT-4o mini, like this thing's actually pretty capable. But with lower latency, so you cut the latency on the AI model, like the GPT-4o, and then you cut the latency on 11 Labs, and all of a sudden the customer support bots and the sales, or like the sales AI agents and all of the stuff that people are trying to develop right now becomes so much more feasible because it's getting faster on the model front. So actually processing and saying things is getting faster on the audio front, on actually speaking. So this is really, really phenomenal. It said applications that chain or parallelize multiple model calls, calling multiple AIs, pass a large volume of context to the model. So this is exactly what I'm doing with AI Box. So I'm very excited about this. So, for example, full code base or conversation history, or interact with customers through fast real-time text responses. So customer support chatbots, all of that. OpenAI in their blog post said, quote, "Today, GPT-4o mini supports text and vision in the API with support for text, image, video, and audio inputs and outputs coming in the future." This is one of the most exciting things. They just kind of snuck this in here. They've built this in a way, the infrastructure is totally prepared for the video. Obviously, OpenAI's Sora AI video model is coming soon. They've been developing and demoing it. And they're already starting to build their next generation of software to completely be prepared for this. And not just that, but the API is going to be prepared for it. So that's what I think is really, really exciting, is we're going to be getting the video API very soon. And this is going to unlock so many new companies. I'm very, very excited. Right now, it only has a knowledge up to October 2023. So they always kind of have these knowledge cutoffs from when, that's usually when they started training the model. So you can assume this was last year that they really started kind of working on this, or maybe the whole 4o model as a whole. They said, thanks to the improved tokenizer share with GPT-4o, handling non-English text is even more cost effective. So, I mentioned kind of that it was better at doing non-English languages, but it's also getting cheaper. So I think this is phenomenal. So they did some like model evaluation scores, and whenever any of these companies come out with a new model, they're always kind of like trying to benchmark themselves and show where they are the best. And it's interesting because it's like they don't always show the exact same model benchmark software for every single release. They just pick and choose what everyone they look good at. But that being said, they are quite they're quite good. So I mentioned the MMLU model benchmark earlier. So just to give you an example of kind of where we're at with this, GPT-4o, obviously the best model, scored 88.7. So pretty much 89% on this. You have something like GPT 3.5 Turbo getting pretty much 70%. So going from 70% to 89%, that is a massive jump. And then we have this new kind of GPT-4o mini getting 82%. So it's not as good as GPT-4o that's getting, 89%, but 82% is pretty dang good when it's, when you say this thing's 60% cheaper. So save 60% of the cost, and you're getting that. They also threw in a couple competitors, Claude Haiku, which again, this is not Claude's best model, right? They're intentionally picking Claude's kind of like their light version, or their faster version too. So Claude Haiku got 73.8. So let's call that 74. So Claude Haiku 74, Google Gemini about 78, and then GPT-4o Mini 82. So significantly better than Gemini Flash and Claude Haiku, significantly better than GPT 3.5 Turbo, definitely not as good as GPT-4o. We see a pretty much a similar, they did it on the GPQA benchmark, the drop benchmark, the MGSM benchmark, the math benchmark, the human eval, the MMU, and the math Vista benchmarks. And I will say that overall, it looks like, if you kind of like average it out, we're seeing pretty much the same thing, or that same pattern of the first one for most of these, where GPT-4o is obviously the best, GPT-4o Mini is the second best, and then you kind of have the other three. And I'll say the one exception, or not really the exception, but the one area where it really shines and has a major difference. So I'm not just going to sit here and like recite benchmarking numbers to you, but one thing that I did think was very interesting is on the math one, MATH. On math, GPT-4o got 76.6, GPT-4o Mini got 70. But when you start looking at how it was comparing to others, GPT 3.5 Turbo only got 43. So we're going from 43 to the new comparative to GPT 3.5 Turbo, which is GPT-4o Mini, is like 70. 43 to 70 is a massive jump. And then, of course, Claude Haiku's at like 41. Gemini Flash is at 41 as well. So we're seeing like low 40s. Now we're jumping all the way up to 70. That is pretty massive. So this is exciting. They have built-in safety measures. They have a lot of things that they've talked about. This is really exciting, and I think it's gonna have some big impacts for kind of what people are working on and what they're building. We're gonna be able to build better and faster. So here's a quote from OpenAI's head of product API, Oliver Goldman, who kind of gave this recently in an interview and said, "For every corner of the world to be empowered by AI, we need to make the models much more affordable. I think GPT-4o Mini is a really big step forward in that direction." People are talking about how they love that this thing is cheaper. George Cameron, who's the co-founder at Artificial Analysis, said, relative to comparable models, GPT-4o Mini is very fast with a median output speed of 202 tokens per second. This is more than 2 times faster than GPT-4o and GPT 3.5 Turbo, and represents a compelling offering for speed-dependent use cases, including many consumer applications and agentic approaches to using LLM. So, like I've been saying, what's cool is this is like twice as fast as GPT-4o. So it's like, well, GPT-4o is like the best at reasoning and whatever. But like, if you could double your speed, there's a lot of use cases that, low latency makes this really important. And of course, they're kind of rolling this out for enterprise as well. So a lot of very exciting things. I'll keep you updated on not just what we're seeing as far as some of these benchmarks, but like what people are actually using this for. I'll keep you updated. Overall, very exciting. If you're building anything with AI, you can go over and get access to this on their API. This is now available. Or you can, of course, you're going to start seeing this if you use any tools that use AI, which is all tools today. You're going to start seeing this embedded immediately as people start rolling this out.